The Sixers are a lot easier. Let me throw their transaction list up on the screen. The Sixers traded number 23, which was David Roddy and Danny Green, to the Grizzlies for DeAnthony Melton, who has 2 years and $16.3 million left on his deal. They signed Daniel House to a 2-year, $8.4 million deal. There's a player option on year 2. It was for the full biannual exception. They signed PJ Tucker to a 3-year, $33 million deal. That was the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And he has a 2024, 2025 player option at the age of 39. They are also hard capped because they use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. James Harden opted out and signed a 2-year, $68.6 million deal, a 2023-2024 player option. The NBA is investigating the Sixers for tampering/cap circumvention because of it. I should also note the Knicks. The Knicks being investigating, the NBA is investigating them for tampering with Jalen Brunson as well. And just like the audacity to hire his dad as an assistant, even though his dad has a track record of being an assistant when that whole thing is happening in the backdrop is just, I almost applaud it because it's so fucking brazen. But so that should have been noted as part of that. Jalen Brunson is not the player I want to tamper for, is basically what I mean there. The Sixers signed Trevelyan Queen to a 2-year, $3.6 million deal that will guarantee in full on January 10th. The second year is non-guaranteed. They picked up the $2 million option on Shake Milton, and they signed Michael Foster Jr. to an Exhibit 10 deal. Notable exits, and I know Sixers fans will be mad or sad. DeAndre Jordan signed with the Nuggets. RIP to DJ's reign in Philly, and then Paul Millsap remains unsigned. Talk about a quick fall for Paul Millsap. I was like, right up until his last season in Denver, I was just like, this guy's going to play forever. What grade did you give Philly?
It's another flat A for me. So that's 2 in this division. I think, just to take the other side first, like maybe you're concerned that the depth behind Embiid at center is a little wanting. I mean, just go find how many different teams have we already said, like, just go get Hassan Whiteside. You just go get somebody that, because like the reality is if Embiid misses significant time, this team's not doing anything anyway. So just get a guy that you can play 7, 8, 10 minutes in big games, and I think you're fine. Like just getting Tucker. How hilarious, by the way, is having a player option at 39, which is what he's going to have. Like pretty likely he's picking that up. I think Tucker is a huge addition. I dinged the Heat for losing him. I don't know how realistic it was for him to end up anywhere but Philly. It seems like that was kind of not done, but close to it. And then House and Melton, I think, are both guys I could envision closing games. So like you've added 3 starter/rotation level players. And also with the tampering thing for Harden's new deal, feel like, anytime you're getting investigated in this particular case, like it's a sign you did something like really well, like a little too well. So it's almost like a badge of honor, not quite in a way than the Knicks and Brunson. It's an A. Like the Sixers are way better. There are still risks, like Harden might actually be washed and Embiid could get hurt, but like that's not an offseason thing. So they just got a ton better and added a bunch of defense, added some shooting. Like I have no nits to pick here.
Yeah, I think like the PJ Tucker deal is just like another team would have given him that. Right. And so if you're just confident that you're going to work within the constraints of the hard cap, which I think you can be confident with because you didn't have all this draft equity to trade anyway, and any deal because you have Tobias Harris, if you were to make something, it's like, I don't want to say it's easy to work within the hard cap, but if there was a team that just wanted anything attached to Tobias Harris to get value, like you can work it so that you're staying within the hard cap. I loved their offseason, maybe a little too 2018 Rocketsy for me, just like, let's run it back with them. But you got James Harden I don't think that this needs to be a precedent. If we're going to start asking, is Anthony Davis going to take less in his next deal, or LeBron after his extension kicks in going to take less in his next contract to help the Lakers get a third star? That should never be the expectation here. But they got James Harden to take less. And honestly, if they circumvented the salary cap in the process, I don't really fucking care. You know what I'm like? What is if he wasn't going to take a pay cut, they would have signed him anyway. And if it's like a handshake deal under the table that, we're just going to pay you next year. Well, hey, guess what just happened with the Clippers with Reggie Jackson and Nicholas Batum? I know it's a different caliber of player, but if it's happening at a lower scale, and I'm not saying this is akin to the Nuggets. They had DeAndre Jordan like in the bag in mid-June, which is just like, imagine tampering for DeAndre Jordan. I get there are levels and dimensions to how tampering works. I can't bring myself to care until you actually like make an example out of a team. And I also don't think it's fair, though, to make an example out of a team unless it's done not uniformly, but in conjunction with hitting a bunch of teams at once. Because look at what happened with the Bulls and Lonzo Ball, or you can't like pretend that actually cares. And you scuttled the Bogdanovich deal for the Bucks. That's like the biggest, I guess, penalty a team has suffered. Not what they actually like were fined of that, or what did it cost them, a second round pick, if anything, but like the deal was revoked. And so unless you're going to come in and revoke these contracts all of a sudden, I just don't care. And yes, to the Sixers, actually, they just make so much more sense on the court right now. And they're also kind of set up to where Doc Rivers can't fuck up the backup center rotation now, which I think is important, because you're either going to play PJ Tucker as a small ball 5 in those minutes, or we're going to actually get to see like a lot of Paul Reed.
Right.
So I think that's, important. I love the DeAnthony Melton pickup. That's someone who he didn't look great in the playoffs with Memphis, but like he's hit the 3 well over the past 2 seasons, and he will defend his butt off. And what you've essentially done is said, hey, we're going to surround Joel Embiid and James Harden with guys who can defend and capably hit threes. There's no like lights out prime Kyle Korver on this team. No rookie. There's not even a rookie year Landry Shamet on this team, or whatever year he ends up in Philly. He's been around the block so many times, I can't even remember. But you have enough shooting. And I also think it's not unreasonable to expect James Harden to be better. This is like he's finally not in Houston or Brooklyn. He's not dealing with any sort of injuries over the offseason. He took a pay cut, which seems to resonate with me, that I don't think he should have, but that he gets it. And like, he kind of understands, like, this is my last shot of like, people have already turned on him and think that he's a poser or can't perform in the playoffs. I think he understands that now, which is only good for the Sixers. Whether he should have actually taken a pay cut, that's for the players' union to talk about amongst themselves. But I'm like, he might be a sneaky great MVP bet this year. Just the odds that he's laying, and you could probably like cash out early on because he's playing so well. I think this team is, I don't know if they're tier 1 contenders now, but I think they're now in tier 2. And to do that when you didn't really have much to work with in the like heading into the offseason, I think that's a big deal. So I don't know if I said my grade, but I want a flat A for I'll go A- because it's like, did PJ Tucker need the player option at age 30? But again, it's like, no, I'm going A. Another team would have given him that deal. So point to me the move that doesn't make sense here.
Yeah. I'm relatively speaking, I'm pretty low on Harden, but I agree with what you said, that like at the very least we can agree that he's better positioned to succeed with this roster than he's been really at any time since things were really going well in Houston. Because it's just like you said it's really good defensive players around him who, like, ideally don't get the ball unless they're shooting open threes. And then instead of Clint Capella, you have Joel Embiid. So like, we're just comparing to like, yeah, this is Rockets East now, and some of the guys are a little older than you might like. I mean, Rockets West, actual Rockets worked pretty well until they started messing with things. So this arguably is like a version of that team that just happens to have an MVP candidate center, which was never the case, for the actual Rockets over the last, 6, 7, 8 years. So, I mean, I think that the number for Harden still actually, having said that, like that might just be like, was he going to get more than, certainly not this offseason because there just wasn't any money, but like, what is his actual market value based on how things have looked the last couple of years? That's another like big unknown, because you don't know how much the give a shit factor really mattered for him.
I guess my whole thing is just like, if there were teams that wanted to compete or could talk themselves into that they could compete and had cap space and James Harden was willing to sign anywhere, he would have gotten the max. But like, we're at the point where players are making so much money. Do I expect them to start taking $15 million pay cuts in a single season? No. But like, at some point, like the richer you are, like every dollar matters less. You might still be obsessed with it. And how much money he makes off the court is one of those guys. Not advocating for it. I can't bring myself to care, except from the side of the Sixers, where it's, well, James Harden at, an average annual value technically over the next 2 years of $34 million makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because that's not even, he'll be making about the equivalent of like a 25% max next year if he picked up his player option, or is about the equivalent of a 25% max this year, like close to it. That's like all of a sudden good value. Are you going to do you think James Harden is, you're low on Harden? So I get like in a vacuum, And it's the way it works, sort of these players being able to make more as they get older is it's counterintuitive, but I guess it's also ageist to say that they shouldn't, but they're not, making the most money when you're for PJ Tucker is going to have the highest paid salary of his career at age 39. In this industry, that doesn't make any sense technically,
Right.
but just like relative to what you think James Harden is now, like 34 million, whatever that number is, like that's pretty great value for the Sixers.
And it's the length of the deal or the lack of length of the deal. That's the big deciding factor for me. Cause like, just to get back to, are we concerned about this being a precedent where guys take, the Nicholas Batum and now the Harden situation? Like it won't be a precedent if this is a handshake thing and Harden opts out and then they give him the full max and like he's god awful for the length of that deal. Nobody's gonna there will not be a line of teams like trying to get, just past the prime superstars and doing these wink things like that. So there's a real chance that this sets the precedent for like, we're never going to do this handshake bullshit again with another star that has like some dubious conditioning and, career trajectory issues. So yeah, to 25% of the cap, roughly, like you said, that's okay. And just knowing that like at worst, you can get out of this after next year. If just like, he just doesn't have it anymore. Well, actually worse would be if they fully maxed him out for, I'm not
trigger another tampering investigation or salary cap circumvention investigation if everything's absolved now, but then he does opt out and sign for the max after having a crappy year.
Yeah, that's tough.
What did you end up giving them again?
The flat A, just an A.